Have you ever felt hurt by just a word, a look, a tiny gesture, as if anyone could tear you apart from the inside, almost without trying? Well, my friend, that fragility ends today. What if I told you that the power to hurt you only belongs to those you allow to have it? Yes, you heard that right. There's a force within you that you haven't awakened yet. A kind of calm that never breaks, a mental shield that makes you invincible, untouchable. And today you're going to discover how to build that fortress, how to tell the world, here I am and I don't break for anything. In this video, you're going to discover the Stoic keys to becoming emotionally untouchable. You'll learn how to develop a mind so steady and solid that no one, and nothing, will ever be able to disturb you again. And no, I'm not talking about turning into a robot. I'm talking about a real transformation, grounded in the ancient principles that helped warriors, slaves, and philosophers face chaos with unshakable calm. Today, you'll stop being an emotional sponge and become a rock, someone who doesn't crack under pressure. Because the world isn't going to change. But you? Aha! Today you become something close to a superhero, or better yet, a true Stoic. But first I want to tell you the story of someone who seemed as fragile as glass, and who ended up unbreakable, as if he'd been forged in steel. His name was Julian, and for years he lived as if his worth depended on the gestures of others. If his boss frowned, he immediately thought he was going to get fired. If his partner didn't reply to "I love you" with the same enthusiasm, he'd spend the whole night wondering what he had done wrong. He didn't need shouting or violence. All it took was a poorly chosen phrase, a condescending look, a badly timed silence, and he would fall apart. On the outside, he was kind, efficient, always smiling. But inside, he felt like a house with no windows. Every word from someone else slipped in uninvited, like a freezing wind that threw everything off balance. But there was one day that broke him, just an ordinary Tuesday. They were closing an important proposal, and in the middle of the meeting, his boss, without raising his voice, without insults, but with the kind of precision that cuts deeper than yelling, said right in front of everyone, "I don't know if you're not trying hard enough, or if this is just all you've got." In that moment, Julian felt a knot in his chest. Everyone looked at him. Nobody said a word. He swallowed hard, forced a smile, and carried on like nothing happened. But inside something cracked. That day, he locked himself in the office bathroom, leaned over the sink, and looking at himself in the mirror, he whispered something he had never said out loud before. "Why does everything hurt me so much?" He didn't understand how others could just go on with their lives, while a simple comment could leave him crushed. That night, he couldn't sleep. He started searching for answers. He read about self-esteem, resilience, the ego. But it was one quote from Marcus Aurelius that froze him in place. "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't be. Choose not to feel hurt, and you won't feel hurt." He closed the laptop, exhaled, and said out loud, "That's impossible. How am I supposed to choose not to be hurt when I already am?" It felt like mockery, like they were telling him it was his fault for feeling, but something about that quote stuck with him. He couldn't forget it. It played on a loop in his head like a catchy song, and over time, he began to understand. It wasn't about not feeling. It was about not handing over your power to every little gesture from someone else, about stopping living like a sponge that soaks up everything, and starting to live like a rock that chooses what gets through and what doesn't. And that's where his transformation began, but it wasn't magical. It was slow, uncomfortable. The next time someone spoke to him with contempt, he felt his chest tense up like always. But instead of reacting, he paused for a second. He thought, "This says more about that person than about me. Am I really going to give up my peace just because they don't have theirs?" He started writing down every night what had hurt him that day, and next to it, the response he would have given if he already had the inner strength he was working to build. He trained like a warrior of the mind. Once his mother told him in a passive-aggressive tone, "You're always so distant. like you think you're better than everyone else. And Julian, who used to feel guilty and try to justify himself, calmly replied, "I'm not better, Mom. I'm just learning to protect myself." That sentence brought tears to his eyes. But it was the beginning of something new, because he no longer lived to please. He lived to be at peace. Every sentence that used to hurt him was now a test for his new self. Every criticism, a chance to train his mental shield. Every day, a step further from the fragility that once ruled him. Today, Julian is still sensitive, but he's no longer vulnerable, because he learned not to hand his heart over to someone else's judgment. He learned to breathe before reacting, to set boundaries, to walk through chaos without letting chaos walk through him. He learned to be a Stoic, and if he did it, you can too. Because that unbreakable calm, it's not the stuff of mythical heroes. It's a choice, and today, you're going to learn how to make it. Before we continue, if this content is helping you awaken that strength within, subscribe and become an exclusive member to access special content. And tell us in the comments, what are you going to stop letting affect you from now on? What wound are you choosing to close for good? Or simply write, "I am a Stoic. My calm is non-negotiable. My mind does not break." That will be your commitment to yourself. 1. If you don't react, you've already won. It's human to feel anger in the face of injustice, fear when danger shows up, or sadness after a loss. It's perfectly normal to want to say the first thing that comes to mind when something bothers us. Do you know why? Because your brain was designed for that, thousands of years ago. You're literally equipped with a system that detects threats and sets off an alarm. That signal comes from a part of your brain called the amygdala, whose job is to make you act fast when there's danger. Like when a lion jumps out of the bushes or someone points a spear at you. But here's the uncomfortable truth. We don't live among mammoths anymore. There are no lions waiting around the corner. No one's going to eat you if someone disagrees with you in a meeting, or if your partner replies dryly on WhatsApp. So why do you keep reacting as if your life were at stake? Are you really going to let your day be ruled by a part of your brain that evolved to help you survive predators? Or are you going to respond like a rational being who leads their inner world like a true Stoic? And this isn't just ancient philosophy. Science also explains why it's essential to train the brain to act from a place of calm. Research from Stanford University has shown that people who activate the frontal part of the brain, where reason, logic, and reflection live, are able to regulate their emotions better, think more clearly, and act with intention. This doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you choose how to act after you've felt. Psychologist Rick Hanson sums it up like this. Every time you don't react to a trigger, you're rewiring your brain to become stronger, more stable, and more free. That's exactly what you're doing when you decide not to explode, not to respond impulsively, not to give power to what's trying to provoke you. Imagine your mind is like a castle on top of a mountain. Each provocation is a stone flung at your walls. If you react, you open the gates and let the enemy in. If you hold steady, the stones bounce off. As the Stoics taught, true strength isn't measured by how hard you hit, but by how well you hold your ground when everything inside you wants to lose control. That's why Marcus Aurelius wrote, "He who conquers his anger conquers his greatest enemy." Because that enemy isn't out there, it's within. So how do you train for this? Here are 3 practical tools. First, the Stoic pause. Take a 3-second pause before reacting. Just breathe. That small space of time is enough for the emotion to ease up and for your rational brain to kick in. Second, train your inner voice. When you feel the heat rising, say to yourself, "I'm not this impulse. I'm the one who decides what to do with it." That one sentence pulls you out of autopilot and puts you back in charge. And third, the same trick Marcus Aurelius used every morning, writing. Write after moments that upset you, not to dwell on them, but to understand them. What triggered you? What part of you felt threatened? That's how you spot patterns and start to map your emotional terrain. Because the one who knows themselves is the one who protects themselves. As Peter Drucker said, "What gets measured gets improved. Reacting is easy. Controlling yourself is not. But that self-control is the first brick in your Stoic fortress. So the next time you feel anger bubbling up, your pulse racing, and your tongue ready to fire back, don't act. Just observe, breathe, and remember, the one who doesn't react doesn't give in. They rise. And in that moment, without yelling, without defending yourself, without losing control, you'll already have won. 2. Not everything is about you. When someone doesn't reply to your messages, you assume they're mad at you. If your boss looks serious, you think you must have done something wrong. If your friend doesn't congratulate you on that achievement, you start spinning a story about how they must be jealous. Listen, not everything that happens around you is a sign aimed at you, and that's not a bad thing. In fact, it's a relief. Epictetus taught us something we should engrave in our minds. A person is not disturbed by what happens, but by their view of what happens. And that's the real trap. We don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are, or worse, as we feel in the moment. When we're insecure, every gesture feels like rejection. When we're hurting, every silence feels like contempt. But here's the truth. Most of the time, people are too busy surviving their own chaos to intentionally hurt you. That colleague who didn't say hi this morning, he was thinking about his doctor's appointment. Your partner seemed distant. They slept badly and have a pounding headache. Your boss didn't praise your work. He has to let someone go today and doesn't know how to do it. And what did you do? You took it personally. You went home carrying a burden that was never yours to begin with. But if you truly want to become emotionally strong, you need to learn what the Stoics understood so well. Not everything that happens deserves an emotional interpretation. Some things just happen. Some people are just caught up in their own world. Some actions come from pain, not intention. And once you realize that, something incredible happens. You gain strength. You set yourself free. You stop reading between the lines of things no one ever wrote. You stop reacting to stories that only exist in your head. And you start living with a peace that no longer depends on what others do or don't do. That's what makes you untouchable, unbreakable. Because while others exhaust themselves trying to decode what people might think, you walk forward, grounded, calm, and free from other people's opinions. Imagine yourself as a clear sky. The comments, gestures, or attitudes of others are like passing clouds. Some are dark, yes, but they all pass, they all move on, and the sky is always still there, untouched, storm after storm. You are not the cloud, you are the sky. And the sky never gets stained by what floats through it. Now, if you want to train this mindset, here are 2 simple but powerful tools. Every time you feel hurt by something someone said or did, ask yourself this Stoic question: is this a fact or a story I'm telling myself? The fact is, they didn't reply. The story is, they don't care about me. And that story, believe me, wears you down far more than the truth ever could. And if your mind keeps spiraling, sit down at the end of the day and write down 3 situations that affected you. Then, for each one, come up with at least one alternative explanation, one that doesn't place you at the center of everything. This simple habit trains your perspective, but more importantly, it makes you stronger. Because little by little, you stop living on the defensive and start living from a place of trust, not from the suspicion that everything is happening against you. Seneca put it best: the greatest freedom is not depending on the opinions of others, and that includes the assumptions you create yourself. Because when you stop thinking everything is about you, you stop reacting with pain. And when you stop reacting, you start living from your center, clearer, stronger, more like yourself. And just like that, without even noticing, you've taken another step toward becoming what you were meant to be: a steady mind, serene and immune to the world's chaos. 3. Say enough with a calm voice. Setting boundaries doesn't have to be a dramatic scene. Saying enough isn't about shouting or starting a fight. Not for the Stoics. For them, it's a choice, a decision that comes from knowing your peace is non-negotiable, that you don't need to raise your voice to protect your space, That true authority doesn't make noise. It just speaks with clarity. Many people think setting a boundary means exploding, that unless you make a scene, people won't take you seriously. But let me ask you something. How many times have you yelled and still gone unheard? How many times have you exhausted yourself trying to get others to respect you? And now think. How many times has someone spoken to you calmly, without raising their voice, without missing a beat? And yet it shook you to your core. Because, my friend, real power doesn't lie in the volume of your voice, but in the strength of your decision. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. For them, self-mastery was the highest sign of strength. Even in the middle of war, a Stoic had to fight without hatred, without rage, without letting the enemy into their mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That means if someone crosses your boundaries, you don't respond with anger. If someone tries to guilt trip you, you don't answer with resentment. Of course not. You, Stoic friend, are far above that. You act, but not from your wound, from your wisdom. Setting a boundary is not a tantrum, it's an act of self-control. And that's the difference between those who get dragged around by the moment and those who live from their center. Let me share an old fable that explains this perfectly. The sun and the wind were arguing about who was stronger. From above, they spotted a man walking with a coat and made a bet to see who could make him take it off. The wind went first, it blew with fury, it roared. It kicked up dust and bent trees. The man, frightened, held onto his coat with all his might. The harder the wind blew, the tighter he clung to it. Then it was the sun's turn. It said nothing. It didn't boast. It simply began to shine quietly, gently, consistently, a little stronger with each minute. And what happened? The man slowly loosened his clothing. He felt the warmth in the air. He smiled. And without realizing it, he took off the coat on his own. The sun won, not by attacking, but by transforming. That's how a Stoic acts. He doesn't shout enough, he doesn't lose his temper, he doesn't fall into rage. No one expects you to set limits without getting angry. And when you do, you throw people off. You disarm them. You command respect without ever being violent. And it's not for them, it's for you. Because every time you set a boundary with calm, you reaffirm to yourself that you no longer need to make noise to protect your peace, that you won't betray yourself just to avoid conflict, that your steady voice is already enough, and that nothing external is allowed to steal your calm. You can do it in a tense conversation with your partner. That doesn't feel good to me. I'd rather we talk about it with more respect. Or at work, I'll gladly take care of it, but I won't be responsible for someone else's part. Or with a friend. That comment makes me uncomfortable. I'd rather you not say it again. That's all it takes. No drama required. And if it's hard, remember this. Serenity doesn't make you weaker. It makes you unreachable to those who want to pull you off balance. It's an invisible wall that doesn't need explanation. It's the language of those who no longer let themselves be shaken, because they've already chosen themselves. Saying enough with a calm voice doesn't just draw a line out there. It establishes a principle deep within. And every time you do it, you're less fragile and more yourself. A little more invincible. 4. Respect is not begged for, it's projected. There are people who walk into a room and don't need to say a word. They don't dominate, they don't make noise. They're simply there, and no one dares to cross the line. That's respect. And it's not earned by begging for it or trying to please everyone. It's projected, it radiates, it's felt. The first thing you need to understand is this. The respect you project outward begins with the respect you practice inward. If you diminish yourself, others will too. If you stay quiet to avoid conflict, others will speak over you. If you always give in, your voice will stop mattering. Epictetus left us a teaching that says it all. Do not seek to have events happen as you want them to. Instead, want them to happen as they do happen, and your life will go well. But here's the nuance few people grasp. It's not resignation, it's strength. Because the one who accepts what they can't control stops lowering themselves just to fit in. And when you stop chasing others' approval, something new appears. People start respecting you, and you didn't even have to ask for it. That respect doesn't depend on your tone of voice or how hard you try to explain yourself. It depends on your presence, on your nonverbal language, on that calm that transmits firmness without aggression. Think of it like this. If you're holding a crystal glass and walking hesitantly, everyone will watch, afraid it might fall. But if you walk tall and steady, no one doubts that you can hold it. The same goes for you. When you hold yourself with clarity, no excuses, no fear of making others uncomfortable, people don't just listen to you, they see you differently. And here's the deeper connection with everything we've been working on. Projecting respect is one of the most powerful shields you can build. Because someone who projects respect isn't pulled down by judgment or manipulation or other people's emotions. That quiet, steady energy tells the world, this is me. And I don't lower myself for anyone. You don't need to become distant or arrogant. On the contrary, you can be kind, warm, and empathetic, and still have clear boundaries. Because respect isn't about how much you give. It's about knowing when to stop. How do you train this? Start by noticing the moments in your day when you betray your dignity just to avoid discomfort. When you laugh at jokes that make you uncomfortable. When you stay quiet so others won't think badly of you. When you try too hard to be liked. That's when you're teaching others how to treat you. Now try this. The next time someone interrupts you, finish your sentence calmly. If someone speaks to you with disdain, respond from a place of calm, not from your wound. And if someone tries to treat you like you're beneath them, don't shout. Confront them with your presence. Not everyone will respect you. That's true. But you no longer need them to in order to stand tall. Because when respect comes from within, it becomes part of your posture, your energy, your gaze. And that, my friend, can't be taken from you. You become steadier, more grounded. And with every silent boundary you set, every calm no you speak, every space you choose not to give away, you become just a little more unbreakable. 5. Only you decide if something hurts you. Let's be clear, it's easy to hide behind the phrase, they hurt me. It's comfortable to blame the other person, to say, they ruined my day. They broke me with those words. But my friend, that's what the victim does. And you're not here to keep living like a victim. You're here to become a true Stoic. Tell me, do you really think Marcus Aurelius, with half an empire plotting against him, went around saying, that comment really hurt me? Can you imagine Epictetus, who lived as a slave, wallowing in pain because his master humiliated him? The answer is a hard no. They didn't fall apart. Not because they didn't feel, but because they chose not to hand that power over to anyone. And that's the point. What hurts you isn't what happens to you. Burn this into your mind. What hurts is how you interpret it, how you hold on to it, how you replay it in your head until it becomes a wound. Epictetus put it in brutally simple terms. It's not what they say that affects you, but your opinion about what they say. And believe me, Epictetus knew exactly what it meant to be insulted, mistreated, disrespected. And still, he understood with absolute clarity that the interpretation of what something means, of who you are, belongs to you and no one else. Centuries later, scientists like Albert Ellis, the father of rational emotive behavior therapy, confirmed that the Stoics were right. It's not events themselves that hurt us, but the beliefs we build around them. Were you ignored? You can think they hate you, or maybe they just didn't notice you. Were you criticized? You can cry about it, or you can realize that maybe they're speaking from their own insecurity and let it slide right off. Were you betrayed? Sure, it might hurt. But the choice to carry that pain around every day, that choice is yours. Because you're not a sponge that soaks everything up. You're a wall that chooses what to let in and what to block. Picture yourself walking down the street in armor. Someone throws a stone. If you're not wearing a helmet, it hurts. If you're protected, the stone bounces off. Your interpretation is the helmet. Your mindset is the armor. And the world isn't going to stop throwing things, but you can stop being vulnerable to everything. Being stoic doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't hand yourself over to the drama. You don't live from the wound. It means deciding that nothing and no one is going to rob you of your peace because your mind is yours. And in that decision, you become free. Want to train this? The next time something upsets you, don't assume it's the truth. Ask yourself, what's another way of seeing this that doesn't make me the victim? That simple shift changes everything, because what someone said stops being the center, and what you choose to believe takes its place. And if something really stings, write it down, get the emotion out. Then look at it from a distance. Ask yourself, is this wound helping me grow or just holding me back? If it's just holding you back, let it go. Don't justify it. Don't keep feeding it. And above all, every morning remind yourself of this. Today I choose what affects me. Today I won't give away my peace over nonsense. Because in the end, the world can say what it wants, act how it wants, disappoint you, fail you, or even ignore you. But if you don't take it personally, if you choose to stay grounded on the inside, no one can touch you. That's not indifference, that's maturity, that's freedom. And that, though it may not seem like it, is one of the highest forms of self-love. And self-love, my friend, will make you untouchable. Because if you know who you are, then tell me, what does it matter what anyone else says? It won't affect you. 6. Watch what you say to yourself when no one's listening. What's the point of the world applauding you if you tear yourself apart inside every time you make a mistake? What good is it if others respect you when you're the first to speak to yourself with contempt the moment something doesn't go as planned? Let's be honest, many people don't need enemies, they already have one living in their head. And it's not their boss, it's not their partner, it's not outside criticism, it's themselves. Sound familiar? I'm useless. I always mess everything up. I'm such a disaster, why even bother? Now here's the ironic question you need to hear. Would you say that to someone else? Would you speak that way to a friend going through a hard time? So why do you do it to yourself? Let me tell you something I'll never forget. Years ago, I met Laura. She was brilliant, sensitive, great at what she did. But every time she made a small mistake, her whole face changed. She lowered her eyes, went quiet, and then when she thought no one was listening, she would whisper, "I'm so stupid. Same old story. How embarrassing." I overheard her once. I walked over and asked, "Do you always talk to yourself like that?" She went silent, looked at me and said, "How did you know?" I said, "Because you can see it in your eyes. You can always tell when someone's at war with themselves." We started talking about the things she said to herself every day, about that inner voice that followed her everywhere. I offered her a Stoic idea. If your mind is your temple, why do you walk in with muddy feet? For weeks, she started writing down what she told herself every time she failed and rephrased it as if she were speaking to someone she loved. I'm not a disaster. I'm learning. It wasn't perfect, but I did my best. One mistake doesn't define my worth. She didn't change overnight, but with each new sentence she began treating herself as what she truly was, someone worthy of compassion, not punishment. The Stoics knew that the greatest battlefield is within our own mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." So, if every day you tell yourself that you can't, that you're not enough, that you're failing, what color do you think your soul is turning? You can't build inner strength if the voice guiding you is a critic with a whip. You can't become emotionally untouchable if you're wounding yourself from the inside. Cognitive behavioral therapy has proven that self-talk is one of the most powerful tools for regulating our emotions, our self-esteem, and our ability to withstand life's blows. Changing the way you speak to yourself literally reshapes your perception of reality. And do you know what happens when you start treating yourself with respect? You become stronger, because you no longer need the world to validate your worth. You're already carrying it within. And if someone treats you poorly, you don't accept it, not because you shout louder, but because that inner voice refuses to go quiet for anyone. Start observing yourself. Notice how you talk to yourself when no one's watching. Ask yourself whether that voice is lifting you up or dragging you down. And every time that automatic criticism creeps in, do this. Stop the thought. Breathe. Reframe it. Speak to yourself like you'd speak to your best friend. Not to lie to yourself, but to remind yourself that you're growing, that you're worth more than your last mistake, that you don't have to be perfect to deserve your own respect. Because only when you learn to be your own ally, the world starts losing its power over you. And in that quiet shift, without building a single wall, you've started creating a fortress from within. Now tell us in the comments, what's the phrase you always tell yourself when you fail, and that you're going to change today? Or simply write, I respect myself. That will be your commitment to yourself. Because starting today, your inner voice won't be a punishment anymore. It will be your greatest refuge, so the outside world can no longer hurt you. 7. Not responding might be your best response. You're just scared, a coward. Maybe. That's all you've got to say? You're not even going to defend yourself? I don't need to. Pathetic. Silence. There you have it. One shouts to feel powerful, the other stays silent, and feels even more grounded. One needs noise, the other has presence, and without raising a voice, one gains control, while the other loses it. Do you understand the strength in that? Not everything deserves a response. Not everything needs to be explained. Because sometimes silence isn't emptiness, it's mastery. Malala Yousafzai understood this perfectly. At just 15 years old, she was shot in the head for daring to speak up for girls' education in Pakistan. And what did she do once she recovered? She didn't answer with hate. She didn't scream for revenge. She didn't lower herself to her attacker's level. She spoke, but she spoke from dignity, from calm, from the future. Her silence at first, her serenity in the midst of pain was what struck the world the most. Because sometimes you don't need to shout to change something. You just need to refuse to sink. And this is where Stoicism truly shines. The wise don't react on impulse. The wise observe. They choose. They respond only if it's worth it. And if not, they let the noise pass right by. Picture someone yelling at a rock, hurling insults, frustration, even pushing it. How does that person feel afterward? Foolish, drained, as if the only thing that replied was the echo of their own voice. And the rock? Still there, calm, unshaken, whole. The shouting didn't crack it. The contempt didn't move it. And without lifting a finger, it's clear who held the power. You can be that, a steady rock in the middle of provocation, not because you don't feel anything, but because you no longer give your energy to those who don't deserve it. Life is full of little tests. That snide comment at a family dinner, that sarcastic look in a meeting, that passive-aggressive message. All of them are bait. And if you don't train your mind, you'll bite every time. But not you. Not anymore, because now you don't react, you decide. And in that decision you become free. Not responding isn't a lack of backbone, it's emotional mastery. It's knowing that your energy isn't up for grabs, that you won't lose your balance for someone who can't hold their own. Start noticing, do you really need to say something? Or do you just want to prove you're not weak? And if it's the second one, is it worth it? At what cost? Choosing silence is choosing your peace. It's seeing the fire burn and not putting your hand in it. It's watching the attack come and not turning your head. It's knowing that the one who shouts the loudest often has the least to say. And you're not in that fight anymore, because sometimes the one who stays quiet isn't giving up. They've already won. 8. Complaining weakens you, decisions shape you. Have you listened to yourself lately? I'm tired of everything. It's always the same with me. I just can't deal with this boss. It's the country, the economy, my family, my luck, blah, blah, blah. Ugh, enough already. Just hearing it is exhausting. Sound familiar? If it does, then here's some news. That voice is draining your strength. Complaints might seem harmless, even justified, but they're tiny leaks of power. Every time you complain without taking action, you're confirming that your life is being run by everything except you. And that, my friend, makes you weak. Not because everything is your fault, but because as long as you keep blaming everything else, you're never going to change a thing. This is where a concept comes in that could change everything: radical responsibility. This term was developed by writer and speaker Steve Chandler, and it means this: you're not to blame for everything that happens to you, but you are 100% responsible for how you respond to it. In other words, you can't control the storm, but you can decide whether you open an umbrella, get soaked, or dance in the rain. That is what forges you. Decisions, not complaints. The actions you take from where you are, not the whining over how things should have been. And, as always, the Stoics already knew this. Seneca once wrote, "It's not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It's because we do not dare that they are difficult." And he was right. Complaining is easier, especially if you're on the couch watching Netflix. But deciding, acting, daring, that is what builds character. Marcus Aurelius asked himself this in his meditations. Did you come into this world to do only what's easy and comfortable? Or did you come to do what a person must do? And then we complain about how everything affects us. But can't you see? You're doing it to yourself. You feed that fragility every time you repeat how unfair, how hard, how bad everything is, without moving a single step. Complaints keep you still, stuck, and drained. Complaints make you small, because when you choose to act even in something small, you're saying, "I'm not waiting for the world to change, I'll change." And in a society addicted to victimhood, that makes you rare. Someone who doesn't crawl, who doesn't make excuses, who gets up with a bruised face but steady eyes. And do you know what's most powerful? Every time you choose to act instead of complain, you're training your mental strength. You're carving out your resilience. You're becoming stronger than your circumstances. Think about it. Complaining about being tired doesn't give you energy. Complaining about your job doesn't make it better. Complaining about your partner doesn't fix the relationship. But if you choose to sleep better, explore new options, communicate clearly, that's where your power begins. Next time you feel the urge to complain, pause, breathe, and say this to yourself: I don't need to complain, I need to act, and if I can't act, then I need to accept. Because that's the other wise option the Stoics always remembered. What isn't up to you, you accept. What is, you transform. Complaining weakens you because it ties you to something you're not willing to change. Choosing to act shapes you because it reminds you that you still have a say, that you can still move, still decide. And every choice you make from action instead of lament gets you closer to the strong, grounded, stoic version of yourself that you're building. One who no longer lives reacting to the world, but takes the reins, even when the road isn't ideal. Because while others are still complaining about the ground, you're already walking. And in doing so, without even realizing it, you become tougher than the challenge itself. 9. There is no strong mind without daily practice. Do you really think you're going to build an invincible mind just by watching videos like this one? Just by understanding the concept? Just by mentally repeating motivational phrases? Spoiler, no. A strong mind isn't built on the days when everything goes well. It's forged day after day in those moments when you could give up, but choose not to. In those invisible days, when no one is watching, when no one applauds, when it's just you with yourself, and you decide to keep training. Can you imagine a warrior who only trains when there's a war? An athlete who only runs on race day? A musician who only plays during the concert? Then why do you think your mind will be strong if you only train it when you're breaking down? The mind is like an invisible muscle, and if you don't work it every day, it loses shape, it loses endurance, it loses clarity. Don't expect to have self-control in an argument if you've never practiced silence. Don't expect composure in loss if you've never cultivated acceptance. Don't expect peace if you've never worked on your attention. Epictetus made it very clear. Nothing great is created suddenly. And what you're building isn't something small. You're building your inner strength, your shield, your center. I recently heard something that blew my mind. A neuroscientist said, "The mind isn't shaped by knowledge. It's shaped by repetition." And that's when I understood why so many people fail, because they confuse clarity with discipline. They know what they need to do, but they don't do it. They understand, but they don't practice. Here's something original you can start doing. Design your own mental gym. You don't need weights or machines. Just 3 spaces, one for silence, where you train yourself not to react right away. One for focus, where you force yourself to concentrate on a single task. And one for courage, where every day you do something uncomfortable that makes you stronger. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be daily. Want examples? That time you chose not to reply to a provocation, practice. That moment you breathed before acting on impulse, practice. That night when, instead of distracting yourself, you wrote about how you felt, practice. And it's there, in those tiny daily acts, that you're building a strong mind. You won't see it today, but you'll notice it when the hit comes, when someone disappoints you and you don't fall apart, when you lose something and stay standing, when the world falls into chaos and you don't. Because a mind that's trained every day doesn't break on a bad day. And this is where it all connects. Every Stoic practice, every repetition of self-control, every small decision is a brick. And while others are still complaining about the weather, the past, or the boss, you're building your mental refuge, stone by stone, no excuses, without waiting for the perfect conditions, because you understood it now. There's no strength without consistency, no composure without repetition, no inner power without discipline. A strong mind isn't born, it's built, daily, without pause, from the inside out. 10. You are not your wound. You are the one who decides to heal it. Think about that friend who hasn't let go of their pain, who always reminds you of how badly they suffered and how that changed their life. Or the one who's still talking about that relationship that ended 5 years ago, as if it happened yesterday. The one who, every Christmas, repeats that since they lost that loved one, nothing makes sense anymore. The one who starts every sentence with, "It's just that I went through so much," as if that justified never moving forward. Now imagine if that same person, instead of staying stuck there, had used that pain to grow. What if, after that breakup, they had focused on rebuilding themselves? What if, instead of burying themselves alive after a loss, they honored the one who passed by living with even more purpose? Where would they be today? That's the difference between living from the wound and living from the decision to heal it. Because we all have wounds, but not all of us build our identity around them. When you define yourself only by what was done to you, or by what you've been through, you reduce yourself to a broken fragment. When in truth, there's a whole story inside you waiting to be written. Zeno of Citium, the father of Stoicism, understood this better than anyone. He was a wealthy merchant. And do you know what happened to him? He lost everything in a shipwreck. His fortune, his cargo, his business, gone. And instead of sinking into bitterness, he said one of the most powerful lines in history. "I made a prosperous journey when I suffered a shipwreck." Read that again. Really take it in. I made a prosperous journey when I suffered a shipwreck. A man who had everything and suddenly had nothing turned his disaster into a rebirth, and went on to create a philosophy that now helps millions face anything life throws their way. Because instead of licking his wounds, he turned them into his greatest tool for reinvention. Do you see the difference? Some people stay anchored to their pain, and some use it as a launching point. There's the person who shuts down after a breakup and tells themselves, "No one will ever love me like that again." And there's the one who, after the same kind of loss, rediscovers themselves, grows stronger, and learns to love from within. There's the one who buries their will to live because someone they loved is gone. And there's the one who decides that the best way to honor the dead is to live fully. For both of them. Both lived through pain, but one chose to stay in it. The other chose to walk forward with the wound. And that is what makes one person fragile after the blow, and another invincible. Because when you choose to heal, truly, you're breaking the emotional dependence that keeps you chained to what was. You stop reacting from the past and begin building from the present. And without even realizing it, you become untouchable to everything that used to hurt you. What once caused pain no longer defines you. What once held you back now propels you forward. And in that moment, in that quiet place where you release the wound without shouting it to the world, you become stronger than the pain itself. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. Healing means deciding that your story doesn't end at the wound. So look at it, acknowledge it, understand what it came to teach you, and then let it go. Because you are not that blow. You are the one who has the power to rise. And if you can rise, then no one, absolutely no one, will ever have the power to bring you down again. 11. You don't need to control others, you need to control yourself. There's something incredibly freeing the moment you truly understand it. You didn't come into this world to control what others do, say, or think. You came to take charge of yourself. And the sooner you accept that, the less you'll suffer. Because the more you obsess over changing the outside world, the more you'll crash into reality. The world won't spin at your pace. People won't always respond how you expect. The weather won't adapt to your plans. And if you keep believing that your peace depends on everything around you falling into place, you're going to live in constant frustration. The key isn't out there. It's in turning all that energy inward, toward the only thing you can truly shape: your mind, your attitude, your response. And once again, the Stoics were way ahead of modern science. At the University of Pennsylvania, a 14-year study followed over 1,000 people to figure out what best predicted long-term well-being. And do you know what the most decisive factor was? Self-control. Yes, my friend, what Seneca was already teaching thousands of years ago. Mastering yourself is the greatest of victories. In the study, people who had learned to regulate their thoughts and emotions, to manage their impulses and stay on course during tough times, were happier, had healthier relationships, and reached more of their goals. Why? Because they didn't waste energy trying to change everyone else. They simply took responsibility for themselves. In Epictetus's words, "Of all the things that exist, some are up to us, and some are not." If we learn to tell the difference, we will never be slaves to anything. And that's what I want to ask of you today. Stop focusing so much on the outside, waiting for others to change, for the world to get better, for your circumstances to align. Start looking inward. That's where your power is, and how do you train that? With concrete practices the Stoics used every day, and that you can apply too. One of them was the dichotomy of control. In every situation that stirs you up, pause and ask, does this depend on me? If the answer is no, like someone's behavior, traffic, or the past, let it go. Seriously. Drop it. It's not your battle. But if it does depend on you, like your reaction, your attitude, your choices, then give it your best. That's where you act. Another practice was negative visualization, what they called premeditatio malorum. The Stoics would spend a few minutes each day imagining what could go wrong, not to be pessimistic, but to train their serenity. You can do this when you wake up. Ask yourself, what could go wrong today? And how do I want to respond if it happens? This prepares you to stay rational when life hits hard. It gives you composure. And they also practiced something almost no one does today: waiting before reacting. They called it the discipline of impulse, the Stoic pause. When you feel the urge to react, stop, breathe, wait a moment before speaking, texting, or acting. That single gesture can change your entire day. And this way, through small daily choices with consistency, you start training the only thing you can truly control: yourself. And when you do that, what others do no longer matters so much, because your peace no longer depends on them. Now that you've realized the only thing you can control is you, let me take you one step further. Because it's not enough to just master your impulses if your mind is still in chaos. A true Stoic doesn't just react with calm, they think with clarity. Stay with me just a little longer, because what's coming next might completely change the way you experience your own mind. 12. Your mind should be a temple, not a battlefield. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture a calm, sacred place, a space where nothing overwhelms you, where there are no screams, no judgment, no rush. That place should be your mind. But now be honest. How many times has that temple turned into a battlefield? A place where everything collides, where you fight with yourself, where your thoughts attack you, your fears scream, and your memories punish you. The noise doesn't always come from the outside. Sometimes it comes from within. And a noisy mind is the greatest enemy of peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote it with brutal clarity in Meditations. Tranquility comes when you order your soul in harmony with nature. That harmony can't be bought. It has to be built, and you can't build it if every day you speak harshly to yourself, interrupt yourself, demand too much, punish yourself, sabotage yourself. Your mind can be a home or a war zone, and that choice is yours. Think about it. You could live in a beautiful house, have your health, even success. But if your mind is chaos, you won't enjoy any of it. It's like living in a palace with an alarm going off all day. That's why the Stoics trained their minds every day as sacred space. They didn't allow just anything or anyone to enter. They didn't let useless thoughts take up attention. They didn't say just anything to themselves. Seneca put it plainly, there is no greater cause of suffering than allowing the mind to be filled with unnecessary worries. And that's exactly what you do when you don't guard your inner world. You allow it to be filled with noise, with borrowed fears, with old guilt, with thoughts that aren't even yours. Want to build a strong mind? Start by making it a place worth living in. No more mental clutter. No more inner shouting. No more storms every time you fall short. Try this. Each morning, when you wake up, say something good to your mind. Don't start the day with your phone, with the news, with messages. Start with you, in silence. Remind yourself who you are and what you won't allow into your head today. When you feel the noise creeping back in, ask, does this build my temple, or does it tear it down? If it tears it down, take that thought out, just like you'd remove someone walking into a church with muddy shoes. And at the end of the day, before you sleep, do the Stoic close. Reflect on your actions, your emotions, your thoughts, not to judge, to learn. What did I let in today that I shouldn't have? And what did I manage to keep calm, even in chaos? Epictetus did the same, and he said it clearly. It's not things themselves that disturb us, but the opinions we have about them. If you organize your opinions, clean your beliefs, calm your judgments, the mind stops being a battlefield. And little by little, it becomes a temple, a place where you can think clearly, where you can decide without noise, where the world and others have no access, unless you allow it. And that temple, my friend, is your true fortress. Because while others rush through the world, you're steady from within. Because while the world screams, you think. And while others get lost, you remain. That's where the war ends. That's where peace begins. Friend, becoming immune to the world's chaos isn't about turning cold, nor about waiting for the world to stop hurting you. It's about you, about how you train your mind every single day, about choosing silence when you could explode, about thinking before you react. Because real change comes when you stop giving away your power and start reclaiming it. No one will build your fortress for you. That's your responsibility and your freedom. If you've made it this far, tell us in the comments. Today I become untouchable.